I believe in you.
But do you believe in love after love?
In love after
Love after. Is it love after love or love after life? I don't
you
know.
believe in life after love.
Oh, completely wrong what I was gonna say. Do you believe in life after love? Ah, that doesn't even sound good.
That's because you said it far too clearly. You have to like blur all your words and just kind of scrub it out so nobody
Is
really
that
knows
how
what you're
that?
saying.
Is that how that works?
I think so.
Hmm.
Oh, one of these days I'm going to do all the things that you're supposed to do. So I was in a room on Clubhouse listening to somebody talking about the way you should properly use social media,
Oh,
and they're like, so what you really have to do in order to get proper engagement is you need to get on social media an hour and a half before your event and engage with all of the different people who engage with your site. And then you have to go to your top five competitors and then you like their last three posts, comment on one. Like, oh my goodness, who has time for all that? Um,
uh,
that's how you get
people who are social media people.
who that's their only job, right?
Yeah.
It's crazy though. So that's how you manipulate the algorithm to get your content in front of as many people as possible, in front of your own fans and things.
Yeah.
There's a science behind it.
Here's the thing. I don't care.
Oh,
Like, people will either come and watch our podcast or they won't, and that's okay.
I
I
hear you.
want him to. I would love for Behind the Beards to grow and to get bigger and all that kind of stuff, but it also has to be what it is. Uh, and this is what it is. It's two guys doing ministry, coming on to tell other people about ministry and about what it's like to be a minister. And
Well, and ultimately, you have to leave some room for. We always talk about the spirit to work, right?
that's right.
And people will find it when they need it, how they need it. Someone asked me if it's worth it. I was like, oh yeah, it's worth it. It's therapy for me. I mean, so even if one person sees it, that's fine. Just kind of going through the process of exploring the things we explore is good. So they didn't understand that. Okay, thought you froze for a second.
Nope, I'm here.
It's quiet in your house this morning, man.
Everyone just went to the back.
I
To the
don't hear Bella.
back of the house. She's asleep in her bed. I really want coffee. I should have not been distracted. I'm gonna get coffee.
It is true. Gotta have coffee. Oh, if only I had the ukulele skills to occupy the silence and the waiting. Erasmo, hermano, I hear you. I am still waiting to get some shirts made up. So we are working on it, and we're working on a provider that we can use that we can make them efficiently
What the
and cost effectively.
She heard you call her. Way to go, Josh.
Yeah, my bad. There we
Till
are.
we're all growing a beard. A man's face should never be bare. We just want some facial hair. We're anticipating, yeah, everyone's waiting for a beard.
Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Behind the Beards. And here on Behind the Beards, we pull the curtain back, take a look behind the scenes, and try to reveal the things that you need to know about your ministers, ministry leaders. I am Joshua Fowler, preaching minister in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and my amen corner over here,
That's right.
Aaron Partlow, youth minister in Longview, Texas. That sounds really good, man. I love saying Aaron Partlow in Texas. I never thought I would hear the day.
Neither did I, but I love it.
I also never
really
thought I would
do.
come across a day where they would have a heat advisory at the track and field championships in the Pacific Northwest.
Oh, yeah.
You hear about that?
That's crazy. Yeah, my
109
parents-
degrees yesterday.
I called my dad yesterday, and he was like, yeah, we're supposed to be like 110 here. And I was like, oh, that's terrible. It's like 78 and not humid.
I know.
Like I was like,
something's
it's
wrong.
actually very beautiful out here today. It is still, when we say not humid, it's still really humid. But everyone's like, oh, it's not humid at all. And I'm like, no, it is. It is.
I know. I
which
turned
is
on the
amazing.
old.
Which is amazing because Josh and I just went to Soulquest in York College in Nebraska, and it was so funny because people were like, "It's gonna be super hot. It's gonna be terrible," and I was like, "This is nice." Like even Wednesday when they're like, "It's gonna be the hottest day ever the whole week," I was like, "This is really nice." Like, yeah, I might put on a long sleeve shirt. That sounds a good idea, Josh. Yeah, I might do that. Like. That's me. I'm Aaron Partlow, the guy who sweats when it's like 60 degrees inside. Like, and I was at Nebraska in the summer. Like, this is pleasant. Like, who wouldn't love this? You
Who
know.
wouldn't
And then
love this?
we get back to East Texas, and I'm like, bah. So, it's crazy. I mean, it's crazy to be all the way through June, almost into July, and like. I really wanted to know, like, if I was going to love this house, if the AC was going to be able to hold up through a real East Texas heat. But I won't.
Well, I will just tell you, if your house is anything like it was when I was there, the AC works, and the AC works well. There were not enough blankets in your house for me to sleep comfortably.
It's set at 70. I don't get why people freak out. It's set at 70. That is a common temperature for a house.
It was not set at 70 when I was there.
What was the setup?
I don't know, but it wasn't 70.
Uh-huh.
I don't remember. No, because all I keep remembering is the temperature in our room at York, which was I came in. You had it set at
We don't
62.
have to talk about that. Moving on to our.
Man, it was cold. No, the AC worked. Yeah. So nice and pleasant in Longview for you today. It's been raining and raining and raining.
Yeah,
You know,
we
here.
had. That's what happens. That like it rains here, and then it really cools off, and then it dries up really quick, and then it stays kind of. It's interesting. So.
Yeah, I guess summer's been weird all the way around. Kind of crazy.
It's that global warming.
Global extremes, I guess, right?
Global extremes, but that's what happens when the world's flat.
When the world's flat, right? It has a giant cedar in the middle of it with its branches reaching to the heavens, and I've been listening to a podcast on Ezekiel 31, where we talk about the great cedar, and so all that imagery is in my mind. So it's funny that you said that.
How amazing!
Actually,
would it be?
just this morning.
Hey, did you know that in October there's a Naked Bible podcast cruise?
In October.
In October.
I'm gonna need the details.
I stumbled across it in one of the last episodes, and it was for 2022. October Naked Bible podcast cruise. Everyone's like, yeah, let's do the acapella one. Yeah, that would be so cool. Josh and I are like, no, the Naked Bible podcast.
It has it has changed my life lately. It has consumed my attention for sure.
I enjoy. It is my favorite. It's like, who needs radio? Like, I just listen to podcasts. I have a 15-minute drive to work and back.
I know.
It's me through half an episode a day. Anyway, we're not here. Trying to sponsor other people's podcasts.
Promote another podcast.
That's just something that Josh and I.
But if I had to promote one, that would be it.
One. That would be.
They were going to get into some. Go ahead and get into some things today, and part of what we're going to talk about is from a article I found from Christianity Today that's written by Ed Stetzer, and I thought he addressed a lot of the stuff regarding burnout and things in a really positive and full way. So the article's on Christianity Today if you want to read it, and it's called
that'd be great.
Pastors and Burnout. Burnout's not really a new thing, and
let me go ahead and type that in and Google search.
Type that in. You have it in the notes, man. You have everything you need in the notes.
That's
2 Corinthians chapter 1 and verse 8. Paul talks about kind of this very thing. He says we're completely overwhelmed beyond our strength, so that even we despaired of life itself. There is an elf at the end of that I forgot to bring in. And in 2 Corinthians 11, there's this daily pressure on me, he says, my concern for all the churches. So, even Paul dealt with some of these things regarding burnout and just being overwhelmed. And this article that was written is written in 2019. So that was even before a lot of the things that we're seeing here, coming from COVID and stuff. That it's just kind of a natural aspect. I don't know about you, but for me, I've always been able to I've always understood that there is a need for balance when it comes to like your career and your life at home. Like when I was working for the car dealership, I understood that it was not healthy for me to bring my work home.
Oh yeah.
To talk about sales and service and goals and all that stuff. You could really see where the line was between healthy and unhealthy relationship between home and work. When your career is church life, that became exponentially more difficult for me to segregate what I do as a part of my calling and my career, if you will, and the Christian leader, father, husband I am at home. And so it's harder to keep that balance, if you will, when your career path is in ministry. And I think that is what leads to a lot of, burnout in ministry, especially.
Well, I always grew up with that, and I was trying to find one real quick, but there was like this picture, and I don't know why, but I feel like it was a Far Side one, but that wouldn't make sense. But like that image of like somebody coming home and you take your work jacket off and you put it in the closet, and that's where your work problems, your work things go. Kind of stay there. And so I always grew up with that mentality. And I guess like I always remember like my dad coming home from the post office, and he would take a moment to, he always entered I felt like he always entered the house kind of quiet and not like, honey, I'm home. And I don't know if he's here today to like correct me, which would be great. But like, I just remember him walking in, taking care of his lunchbox, putting it away, going downstairs and getting changed. And when he gets changed, then it's like, okay, now I'm here and I'm dad, and let me be this guy that I'm supposed to be. And it's the same way for my wife. I feel like she used to work full time at the hospital, and honestly, like she'd get home and I'd say, hi honey, we give her a kiss, and then like really she would go drop her lunchbox off, go to the room, get changed, and about 10 minutes later she comes out, and she just needs like those 10 minutes to kind of leave all the stress and the worries and everything from work, and then to be here and to be present. And it's really hard when you do that. It's really hard to do that when you're in ministry or when you're a ministry leader. And I think there's a little bit difference there, because as a minister, like you do it full time, like you actually get paid to do this. As a ministry leader, it is part of your volunteer schedule. So it's extracurricular. I don't know if that's the right word for that, but you know, there is a little bit of a difference there. So I'm going to just talk about it from the ministry standpoint. But as a minister, like it's different, and it's always, I guess for me here's the hardest part for it, is that when you work a job where your main goal is to like connect and work with other people during their free time, you're working during when they're working, and then you're working when they're not working. Mm-hmm. So when are you not working? You know, because if you're not working while they're working, then the perceived notion is, oh, well, he's never working. You know, but if you're not working when they're free, then you're not really getting any work done. And so it becomes very difficult. It becomes very blurred and really hard to turn it off. And I know we've had many conversations that, you know, ministry isn't a job, it's a lifestyle and it's a life choice. But at the same time, like, we talk about like self-care and taking care of yourself and being present and being a good dad or a mom, you know, and how those are extremely important for us to do and not to neglect. So yeah, I mean, it's a hard line to walk, you know?
Yeah, it really is. And frequently what happens, and a lot of the reason we get to this place of burnout is because you don't see it coming. Mm-hmm. And so you come in here and you get to this place where it's like all of a sudden you find yourself overwhelmed. You know, even, you know, we just read there from 2 Corinthians and Paul says we despaired of life itself.
Right.
Like, it just kind of feels like the whole world is coming down. And I guess not a shameless plug because it's our podcast, but you know, if you go back to listen to episode 14 of this year from
shameless plug for our
April 6th. It's actually the one that we had Jody on. You know, your co-minister there. We were talking about, you know, holidays and Easter and stuff and how you balance family. We dealt with a lot of this stuff there. It was really solid, and he had some good things to add there. But how do you know, like, this is what I'm looking for, is how we come through and say, hey, how do I see when this is coming about? How do I see when this is coming up? What are some signs that I can see to help me recognize that? And I really love these signs that Ed puts out here in this article. And the first one is avoiding people, right? That sounds really bizarre to come from
a minister,
like a minister, right? And so it's like, do I find myself avoiding people? And I don't mean like specific people, because I know that there are sometimes there are things I have to get done in a day. And I know that there are some people in my life that need, you know, more attention. And so I might have to tell them, hey, I can have this conversation I can do this with you, but I need to do this first. And then I can give you all of what you need. But there's just sometimes this place where we get to where it's just, I just am avoiding people, period. And for an extrovert to say something like that, if I am avoiding people with the personality that I have, you know, that should be a sign to me that there is something like awry, you know.
Awry. Yeah. Like, that's interesting. So I haven't had a whole lot of time to look over these notes, so this is kind of all refreshing and new to me. But that's just a really interesting kind of thought process, and to think about, like, moments when I've been really frustrated or burnt or really tired of ministry. I think that's really like the word of it, like tired of ministry. Yeah, I do that. Like, I get into that cave. I also think of like other moments, like after a lock-in or after a big trip where you drive a lot, where it's like I really want to avoid people, but a lot of that's just because I'm tired and I want to sleep. But I think like after a summer for a youth minister is like, there's a couple reasons why August is pretty bare when it comes to youth ministry stuff for me. The main reason is because kids are going back to school and they're learning how to be students again after not being students. and so they don't really have much. They have a lot of homework to catch up on and some other stuff that they're trying to do. So we don't do a lot of extracurriculars. Two is because like it's almost like I need that as like a prep month to kind of study and think about what the direction I want to go for the fall in the winter quarters. And the other part is maybe I just need to step back for a little bit to recoup and to recover mentally from the stresses of summer, and the go aspect of summer, to be able to like refresh myself. And I think an experienced youth minister, an experienced minister needs to find the way to be able to recognize when they know that things are going to be stressful, when you know what are stressful months, when you finally find like a routine of, okay, this is kind of how we do it. And that's just kind of like the planning of events part of ministry, which people think is 90% of ministry, but it's really not. Like, that's the easy part of ministry, the event coordinator part, right? The hard part of ministry is when you have a sermon that is not coming and you really need to focus on it, but then out of nowhere there was 2 deaths and you have to do 2 funerals in the same week, and then all of a sudden you have these marriages that are falling apart and they're wanting to call and talk to you and figure it out. And so all of a sudden all of your time is being taken by the hurting and those who are, and that's the more reality of ministry and ministry leaders, and not just ministers in general. And that's where it can get to the signs of burnout. I don't know.
Yeah.
What do you think? Am I rambling?
Are you? No, you're not rambling. I think there's a lot to that, because you can avoid people in a healthy way. Right? Like, you can get to this place where it's like, hey, I need to take a step back so I can recover. And I think that is the healthy way of going about that, because it recognizes something that you're trying to avoid.
Unless you have fault with that brother, then you should go and talk to that brother.
That's right. However, what we find ourselves in is in this place where it's like, no, I'm going to come in, I'm going to lock the door, and I'm turning these lights off because I don't want anyone to know I'm here, because I don't want anyone to come talk to me.
Right.
Or, the phone rings and you look at it and it's not, you don't respond with a message that says, hey, I'm tied up right now. Give me an hour and I'll call you back. It's no, send that to voicemail and I'll call them in 3 days, maybe, if I feel like it.
It's so-and-so again.
And it's not even because it's so-and-so, but just because it's people, because you just get to this place sometimes because you have never taken the time to rest from those things,
right?
That your mind just can't handle anything else. There tends to be an assumption maybe that everybody wants something from you, because in that moment of avoidance, what you don't realize is there's a whole lot of people that call just to say, hey man, what's going on? Or send you a message with a funny GIF or a meme, or just want to share some news with you. Because when we're in that place of avoidance, our whole mind goes to everybody wants something. And that's not true. Our mind conflates that. Procrastination is something that I struggle with kind of regularly, but I notice that when I am on this verge of burnout, procrastination is extreme.
Oh, it is.
Like, hey, like it's Saturday night and I'm putting the final, not the final touches. Like, I have to have my outline ready on Tuesday for my secretary to put things into the PowerPoint. So I have the outline of my sermon ready early in the week. And that's good for me. But when I am on the verge of burnout, I might be writing my sermon on Saturday. And that's not a really good place for me to be, mentally, to be putting things off in that way. Events, camps, hey, it's next week. Have you bought anything? Have you done anything? It's like,
Hey, we will figure out the encounter when we get there. Well,
That's
it
right.
really
That's right.
reminds me. It reminds me of this passage. Remember that we read last week that we kind of focused on Revelations chapter 2, and he's really criticizing this church because you've left that love that you've had in the beginning, and it just reminds me like when we're getting close to burnout, like we're no longer loving what we've done or what we do.
Mhm.
Like as a minister, I love people. I love people. I love helping them. I love talking with them. I love being there for them and that kind of stuff. But when we get close to burnout, like it gets difficult to be around people. And that's the hard part about it. Like, and that's the major part of our job. And then when we get to procrastination, like I love camp and I love encounters. I love planning camp. I love planning that. But yeah, I love planning youth activities and stuff like that. Like that's why I do youth ministry, because I'm good at it and I enjoy that. But yeah, when I'm feeling that burnout, when I'm ready to toss in the towel, I'm like, do I have anything? Can I just Google something? Okay, here's a devotional, whatever. It's Methodist, but we can change it, or whatever.
No, yeah.
I'll just run this, and it's wrong. It's wrong because I'm not dedicating that time and that energy to that, and I'm also not. I'm not acknowledging where I'm at spiritually, and I'm not in a healthy place. And so yeah, it's crazy. But then you also have like this impatience with people, right? Where
Oh yeah.
where you're just like, you just have no patience. Like it's like, are you kidding me? You're doing this again? And I forget that, like, I guess when I struggle and when I start having this impatience with other people, I forget how much patience God has to have with me.
Yeah.
Right? And I forget.
We sing the song to our kids, right?
Yes. Yes.
Don't be in such a hurry. Oh yeah.
And so I don't know, that's like the hard, and here's the thing about youth ministry is that, in my opinion, I feel like kids are struggling with the same stuff that I kind of struggled with. It looks differently. It might be handled differently. But as Solomon said, nothing's new under the sun. Like, we all struggle and we all wrestle with this. And that's like part of the whole, like, passing down our faith is not just like, hey, here, I'm passing down my faith. This is how many books of the Bible. No, it's, hey, I've struggled. I still kind of struggle with that. Let's walk through it together. That's
Right.
the part of passing down our faith. But then we have like this impatience that we have with people. Like, I think a lot of times ministers, they become even more impatient with elders or shepherds or other ministry leaders or co-workers, where they always do this instead of, well, hey, let's go talk about it and let's kind of get on the same page, kind of a mindset or idea. What are your thoughts?
No, I think you're right on. Some of the impatience for me comes from recognizing my own kind of failures. I also get impatient when I feel like, hey, I could have avoided this, and if you just would have followed my advice previously.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm kind of over it. And that is Satan's way of allowing that temptation to come in, that temptation of pride and hubris, that ego that thinks I have something special to offer this church in this place that no one else can do, which in one sense is true, but in another sense is so not true, because God will use anybody and everybody
Right. Yeah.
to accomplish his goal. He doesn't need me.
We are all
Don't say it.
special. We're all special, like marbles.
Like marbles, right?
We're all special, but we're all the same.
And so, that impatience is a part of that temptation that comes in, that just kind of leads me down a path of kind of conflating my own self-worth,
Right. Yeah.
and my own being needed in such a way. We often create this environment that makes us feel like we are more needed than we really are. Because God will use anyone that's in that position to
Yeah.
lead the church. But we see ministry leaders, we see ministers, we see pastors who are giving into temptation over and over again. And one of the reasons that occurs is because we don't have these healthy boundaries
Right.
that prevent us from getting to this place of burnout. And
Right.
when we get burnout, when we get tired, when we get impatient, when we become avoiding people, Satan has us right where he wants us, and then he begins to work on all of those insecurities to lead us into a path that really is detrimental to the church.
Well, and I think about the apostles, and I know Paul didn't stay at places very long, and you think about how long it took to walk just to some of these places,
Right.
And I know he did ministry along the way and those kind of stuffs, but like that's evident in their lives. But it also took a long time to walk to these places, and so they had a lot of time to just walk and to be away from it. I mean, there was a lot of roads where they would have walked and not seen anybody for a very long time, kind of a situation. And so I think a lot of times we forget about the walking distance and the travel time
Right.
and that kind of stuff. And I think it's important for ministers to remember that and to do that. I am super jealous of one of our colleagues that Josh and I both know is taking I'm not jealous that he's getting a sabbatical. I think that's like super powerful and super great, and it's something that churches should talk to about to their ministers who have been there for a long period of time. Like I think if you've been there for over 6 years, 7 years, that you should get you should be working towards that so that you can be there another 6, 7 years.
Right.
But that's a conversation for another time. But he's being able to take this time to go to a quiet place, to go to a place where, you don't have tech, you don't have anything, and you just get to be quiet and alone with God, which is terrifying. Don't get me wrong. It's terrifying because I talk all the time and I listen to people all the time. And that's how I avoid listening to myself and deep down and what might come out, the truths about myself that I try to ignore. But to be able to have that time to refocus and reschedule and, just kind of look deep within yourself and find the Spirit and where Jesus is dwelling within us and tap into that. Super powerful. And what a way to say, like, hey, I want to fill my cup so deep that I will be able to redraw from these reservoirs for a long time. Right? Like that's what that is. And so it's crazy. And so, how do you protect yourself in the church from this? Like, that's the real question. Like, some people get sabbaticals and some people will do that. Some people will take a work day and it'll be a day where they study. And people know in the church, hey, Tuesday is my study day. And so I might answer the phone, I might not. But I'm usually going to be in a place where I am studying and working to make sure that this goes well, so that if I need to do anything the rest of the week, I'll be able to be able to do that. And I use that. Like Mondays are my, I spend all day in the office on Mondays, unless the power goes out like yesterday. But we spend all day in the office Monday because that's when I do all of my office work, things that I need to get done in the office, which is something that I hate doing the most is office work. But and I'm bad at it, so that's why I hate it. But anyway, so that's when I do all that. And so it's so what do you do if I do that so that I can be successful in youth ministry? What then? Have I even thought about how do I protect yourself? How do you protect the church from these scenarios and like this?
Well, I think by protecting yourself, you are protecting the church.
Right. I guess
and
I was
so
making the example of like, this is how I protect my ministry, and this is how I do it. Is I spend Mondays in the office,
right,
and I know I do this Tuesdays, and I know I kind of move through this. So then, what are we doing to protect ourselves in the church from spiritual burnout?
right, and everybody's not in a place where they get that sabbatical, and
No,
you know, it
not
is.
everyone deserves one either.
We can talk about that. Sometimes I
like it.
think it's a sabbatical is something that maybe you don't know you need, but can change the dynamics from both directions. And so it's 6 1, half dozen the other, right? Which comes first? But you do have to pay attention to that spiritual life.
Yeah, I agree.
For me, it is finding something. We talked about, the Naked Bible podcast at the beginning. There is something that just I will probably never be able to preach the kind of things that are talked about because number one, they don't preach very well. They're fringe kind of topics, but those fringe topics have really deepened my my passion for the things of God, the divine counsel of God, and what that means for us as Christians, every day. It's not. I'll use a little bit of it here and there, but it's not something I can just go, "Ooh, this is going to revolutionize my preaching."
Right.
But what it does do is it kind of gives new life to that walk of faith,
Right.
a new excitement, a new passion, and so it gives me something to really look forward to that deepens my spiritual life. Because if you spend so much time pouring that stuff out into other people and you aren't finding other ways of filling your own need for spiritual growth, you're going to just run low.
Right.
And I think by protecting my own spirit, my own spiritual health, you're also then protecting the church. Staying active, is another way. I have noticed that when I am really spiritually healthy, I am much more likely to want to take the dogs for a walk, to want to stop by the gym, even if it's just for 20 or 25 minutes. I may not have a lot of time, but I won't skip those.
Right.
But when I'm in a place of real spiritual fatigue and nearing burnout, like I don't even want to do the things that kind of bring me joy.
Right.
Like taking a walk with my wife, spending a little bit of time at the gym, going and playing basketball with the guys or soccer. Even sometimes the refereeing and umpiring that I do just becomes, it's no longer fun. It's just a job.
It's just a job. It's just tedious.
And when it comes to that, it's like, okay, something's not right. Something's going on. Any thoughts on activity?
I mean, it's true. Like, I noticed that. Okay, so for me, like, it's this idea of being adventurous. Like, my wife and I enjoy being adventurous. Like, just like going to new places, checking it out, or like going to a new store, going to a new restaurant, going to just whatever. Like, oh, they're having a food truck festival. Do you want to go to it?
Absolutely, you do.
Like, I do, but not when I'm feeling ministry burnout. You know what I want to do when I have ministry burnout? I want to go home and I want to sit on the couch and I want to watch Netflix.
Right.
I want to do something. I don't want to turn the lights
off.
And I want to veg. I've noticed, actually, this is kind of interesting. I have noticed, and now it's a little bit different because I have a riding mower, so it's not really as being active. But like I've noticed, like if I get like if I feel in the down curve, I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna go mow the lawn. And when I go mow the lawn, I listen to podcasts and I enjoy it. But you know what happens is I get done mowing the lawn and the podcast is not done. So I'm like, well, maybe I'll trim those trees. Maybe I'll move those. And so I start doing things. And then when I come home, I look at my yard and I go, yeah, I have a good looking yard right now. This is good. I like it. And then I'm like, you know what? I'm going to clean out the garage. I'm going to clean out the shed. And so I did that. I reorganized it a couple weeks ago. And surprisingly, when you organize things, you can fit everything in there. So that's kind of cool. And so it's like it's like stuff like that. And there's this idea of like also like just being honest with myself and realizing when I'm in a slump and what can I do to get out of that. Yesterday morning, I realized that I have not spent nearly as much time as I used to praying. And so I found a new app that is going to remind me every day to kind of stop and to pray. And I use the Logos software on most of my computers. And so I pop that up and it has a prayer list up there. And so, I've been taking that and I've been honest with myself and saying, I preach and I talk a lot about about prayer life. How has mine been? Well, mine hasn't been super awesome. I talk to God and I talk to God quite a bit, but do I stop and talk to God?
Right.
And so like a couple of those things to protect myself is just to be honest where I'm at. Like I can't lie to myself. Like I know when I'm feeling the burnout. And to seek friends. One of the best parts about being here in East Texas is that I have a couple friends that live nearby. And I haven't actually talked about this, but this is actually really awesome. The group of youth ministers that I just stepped in with have become really good friends. There's one guy, another youth minister, who is doing the keynotes, KT, at our next youth rally, our Netsus Day that we're hosting. Crazy. Take a job and then host a youth rally that your church has never hosted before. That's fun. Like, I don't know. Like, I'm just like crazy. But anyway, he's become a really good friend. And Alan, who's been on the show a couple times, and Josh, of course. Josh is more than a friend. He's like legitimately like a brother. But those guys like text each other weekly, and we're like, hey, how's it going? How are things going? Good. I'm glad you're doing well. And having that honest communication of, honestly, I'm feeling really bad today. I don't know what it is, but this is going on. And I'm feeling that depression, or I'm feeling that burnout. And having those honest connections and seeking friends and communicating about ministry. And last plug, Mr. Josh Jones, love that guy. And he talks about NCYM, and there has never been a moment in my life that I could recreate what like high school church camp was for me. Right? And being in that room of worship for me, like I remember Camp Yamhill, I remember the small lodge, I remember sitting in there, it being hot, it's nighttime, the projector's going, we got 3 or 4 people up there leading singing, and we got the side doors open so we can get some cross breeze because we all stink. But we are just singing, and we might be singing that same phrase, holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty. And we might be singing that like 15 times, but in my heart and my soul, I'm just praising, and I'm in that place of peace. And I've never been able to find that spot to recreate that as a youth minister until I started going to NCYM. And I was sitting in a room full of people who are dedicated to giving their lives and being sycamore trees for other teenagers all over the country, who just want to teach teens and other people about Jesus Christ. And we're all sitting in a room, stripping off all of our burdens and our worries, worshiping and singing. And, that's how I protect myself. And not going to NCYM this last year because of COVID, I felt it. I felt it in my ministry, and it was crazy and it was wild. And so I'm looking forward to going again in Atlanta, Georgia. I feel somebody walking around in the house, so I was like thought somebody was like behind me. But I don't know. Like I know I just rambled through like 3 things, but those are things that I have actively sought, and I've learned about myself that I need to do. This podcast came out of trying to not have burnout. Like this was a way that Josh and I could get together every week and talk about our ministry experiences in our lives, so that like we could be better at our jobs. And it is something that I look forward to every single Tuesday. And I love talking about Behind the Beards, and it's something that has brought me back to this idea of, my first love, which is youth ministry and ministry. And I love coming on here, and I love talking about the low points and the high points, and a lot of those middle points
Right.
of ministry.
There is an honesty, that you mentioned that you have to have not only with yourself, with the people around you. Friendship is really hard in ministry.
Oh, it's so hard.
It's hard. It's hard for people to get close to a minister because, of some, belief or stereotype that they may have.
Right.
It's also hard for ministers to get close to congregants because, you always have this fear that someone's going to think you're playing favorites.
Right.
And the truth is you probably are going to play favorites.
Right.
But not as a minister, because as a minister, we're ministering to everyone.
Right.
But we do have to have, a circle of people who are just simply friends.
Right.
And, sometimes ministers can make the best friends, to other ministers, and sometimes we can make the worst friends.
Yes.
And in an unintentional way, right? Sometimes we think we're being super supportive when piling onto the problems only, deepens us into that.
Yeah.
And so we have to be really intentional, even as ministers, being friends to other ministers and saying, what do you need from me in this moment?
Right.
Do you need for me to stand beside you and fight this battle with you?
That's right.
Do you need me to slap you in the face and say, hey, shake out of it, wake up?
Right.
You need to get this done. Or do you just need me to sit here and be quiet and just be a place for you to vent? But we need those friends. And you talked about NCYM. We have to have those places where we can grow. We can pay attention to our spiritual life, but if we're just paying attention to it and we're not providing avenues of growth, then we're never going to be a long-term asset to our churches.
Right. Yeah.
And for me, the biggest one came in like pacing yourself, and understanding that, I'm trying to think which one of our professors, I think it was Dudley, who said, don't take a day off. He said, take a family day.
Right.
He said, people don't mind bothering you on your day off, but if it's your family day, people are a lot more mindful of what that means. But you have to be proactive. I have to be proactive at creating those boundaries. Boundaries is something that's come up several times here in this episode.
Yeah.
Heather and I just celebrated our 24th wedding anniversary on Monday. And so last Thursday, it's like, hey, you know what? We're going to go to Gulf Shores. We're going to get a hotel. We're going to stay the night. We're going to spend Friday at the beach and then come home. And it wasn't long. We got all the work done on Thursday. We left here about 3:00 on Thursday afternoon, had dinner at Roosters in Mobile. Hey, if you're ever in Mobile, want some really good Latin American tacos, Roosters is the place to be. And then we just went and we hung out at the hotel, hung out at the beach for a few hours, and then came home. And so it wasn't like it was this huge, expensive vacation, but just getting away, putting the phones away, turning everything off, trusting that your kids aren't going to burn the house down while you're gone. And when you get back, the church is still also going to be standing and you're still going to have a job. Just shutting everything down for a little while to take inventory and to recognize the importance of things around you. Take that space, because when you come back, you're going to come back rested. If you take that day off, you're going to be more likely to work well on Monday if you've taken your Friday, or you're going to work better on Tuesday if you've taken your Monday, whatever your day is. That margin is so important to your effectiveness the rest of the week.
Well, I also think like when we take those family days is to use that to come back that way. Like have that mindset of I'm going to come back and take that deep breath. It's kind of like, when you're drowning and you're coming up for that air. Like it doesn't do anyone good if you come up for air and then you go back down and you keep doing this. right? Like take that deep breath of air and use that time to focus and really to bring yourself to that state that you can come back and do some good.
Right.
You know? Don't just come back and keep splashing around and being angry and upset. Don't go on vacation and then come back and be like, oh, my problems are still here. Yeah, like, of course your problems are still there. They're not going to go away. And that's 90% of ministry is that the problems are there. And so come back and take a deep breath and say, okay, so how am I going to walk through this? Well, I'm going to walk through it with God, and I've spent this time praying about it and moving forward there. And so, you know, our Behind the Beards moment is ministers, make sure that you're taking those family days, but make sure that you are taking those days and coming back knowing that those problems are there and that you're ready to kind of face them and kind of move through them. Don't come back and just expect everything to be solved and done and better, because it's not all going to hotels and hanging out with your wife all weekend. Like, that's wonderful and that's bliss. And ministry's kind of dirty sometimes, and that's what we're called to do. We're called to go to those places and work and bring the light of Christ. And so go out, get your light recharged, and come back in and shine that light and be ready to be there and do that. And people realize that your ministers, your minister leaders, like, look for these signs. And don't be a jerk and be like, hey, I think you're burnt out.
Right.
You know, don't be that guy. But say, hey, what can I do? Is there anything that I can take over and do for you and help so that you can take some time and chill or relax and do this? Or it may just be like, for me, this would be awesome. If somebody would be like, hey, I realize that you're really fat. Do you want to go play Frisbee golf? You know, okay, probably leave out that first part. But, you know, like, because that physical activity, it does help me. And that's something that I enjoy and I'm very passionate about. And I'm excited that I've met some more people who are really interested in doing that kind of stuff. But like Josh said, like, getting out and doing some of that physical activity, whatever it is, can really help. Maybe not golf. I feel like golf, I always come back more frustrated because I'm really bad at it. But that's not just me. That's okay. So that's just a personal thing. So yeah. But hey, we want to thank you all for being here today. We really appreciate it. We hope that you come back. I hope that you go and subscribe. We're on most major podcasting apps and things like that. So you can find us at Behind the Beards. You can find us on Twitter that we don't post on, but really you can find us on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube and all the major podcasting stuff. If you don't like seeing our faces and you just want to hear our voices, I understand. But we want to thank you guys for being here today, and we'll be back here next week. We also want to remind you of Galatians 6:9. This is kind of like our theme passage for the entire podcast is don't grow weary in doing good. This world is messy. Life is messy. So allow Christ to use you to do something different, something good, something great in Jesus' name. I'm Aaron, and this is Josh, and we will see you next week on Behind the Beards.
Till we're all growing a beard. A man's face should never be bare. We just want some facial hair. We're anticipating, yeah, everyone's waiting for a beer.